Conscient Podcast, Episode 161. Alchemize, Circle.
It's kind of like sacred medicine, sacred plant medicine in a way, where it meets you where you are based on your intentions, based on your setting, based on, your relationships and everything, where that space in between, I think, is the most powerful piece, is us holding the container and, guiding people in certain directions, but then here's the silence, go run with it and see, what comes up for you.
This is a special episode of the Conscient Podcast about Green Dreamer's Alchemize program, which is a 10-week audio-based program of daily creative prompts and imagination practices. So this episode features 4 of my fellow course participants: singer and music researcher Anais Linares, bass player and also music researcher Ben Finley, climate educator Barbara Leckie, social innovator and educator Michelle Baldwin, and myself in conversation with Kamea Chayne, host of both the Alchemize program and the Green Dreamer podcast. I also want to mention that a 6th member of our Alchemize Circle, educator Dorina Hussein, was not able to attend this recording on March 28th, 2024. So our group of 6 Alchemize program participants met every Saturday morning during this 10-week course to discuss what we were experiencing and to check in with each other. And what you're about to hear is our exchange with Kamea about what we experienced during the course and how it is literally transforming our lives. Now, admittedly, the Alchemize program is not specifically about art and the ecological crisis, as per the mandate of this podcast. However, this series of 40 creative exercises integrates all kinds of artistic and cultural practices: storytelling, drawing, soundscape composition, poetry, and much more. And so I consider Alchemize as a whole to be a work of art. A work of art that you can come in and out of, and one that invites the participant, the learner, to both grow and let go. It's a 55-minute exchange, and at the end you'll hear that we end with a moment of gratitude and an example of what brought us joy that day. And one of the joys of this program for me was that moment of joy, because it just reminds us to be grateful and to be in the moment. So for more information about this program, you can go to greendreamer.com/alchemize. Everything will be there. I want to thank my Alchemize Circle colleagues, Anais, Ben, Barbara, Michelle, and Dorina, for their collaboration. We will continue to talk to each other and help each other as we learn and unlearn. And also very warm thanks to Kamea Chayne and her team at Green Dreamer for their brilliant, generous, and spirited work with the Alchemize program. This is a special edition, so to speak, of the Conscient Podcast with a special guest, Kamea Chayne, who is, well, she'll introduce herself in a minute. But what's going on here is that I've been taking a course with a number of other people called Alchemize, and it's produced by the Green Dreamer podcast team. And we're going to talk to Kamea today about our experience with the course because we have done it and it's been wonderful. And it's, I think, useful to give feedback to those who produced it, but also to just do what we normally do every Saturday. Today's Thursday, but which is to exchange on what we've experienced. And I've really enjoyed being with you all. So why don't we do short introductions, where you are, what you do, and then we'll ask Kamea to talk and to tell us a bit more about what the origins of the project were and what her intentions are and all that. So I'll start. My name's Claude Schreier. I'm a composer. I live in the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people in Ottawa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anais, and I'm currently in Guelph, Ontario. Um, and I'm actually originally from Palm Springs, California, which is Sekhe territory. It's Cahuilla people, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm also a student at the moment. I'm researching something that I'm kind of seeing as arts-based kin making, and I think I will leave it at that.
Sure. Hello, everybody. So nice to be here. Yeah, my name is Ben Finley, and do a few different things, but I love to play the bass. I love to compose music, and maybe I'll leave it there for now. And then I am currently also in Guelph, which is Treaty 3 territory, Mississaugas of the Credit, and also the traditional territory of the Attawandaron and other First Nations as well.
Hi there. I am Barbara Leckie. I, like Claude, am in on unceded Algonquin territory in Ottawa, now called Ottawa, and I'm a professor at Carleton University. And that's all I'll say for now, too.
Hi, I'm Michelle Baldwin. I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Inuit peoples, which is London, Ontario, Canada. And I am currently in a role where I'm reimagining or thinking about how do we transform capital and philanthropy with community foundations of Canada. So definite themes related to all of this. And then I also teach at the university around governance, leadership, ethics. But more importantly, I'm a grandmother and a lover of nature.
Well, thank you for the introductions. And last but not least, Kamea, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about alchemize, please?
Sure. I'm Kamea. I'm calling in from Mokuokeave, which is ancestral island of Kanaka Maoli. I'm the host and producer of Green Dreamer and Alchemize, and also just a writer and creative. In terms of Alchemize, I guess if you're curious about like the seeds of how it came about, was prior to Green Dreamer, I practiced as an integrative health coach for a little bit. And in that training, I had learned to incorporate practices of visualization and imagination and various forms of breathing and meditation. So, of course, as my work with Green Dreamer progressed, like that sort of stayed with me. And I was like, what could it be like if we were to apply those things to the more collective and radical dreams that we have? So how do we kind of weave those practices together? Because a lot of the imagination and visualization practices that I had worked with and was familiar with mostly were geared towards supporting people to develop new habits or some sort of intervention or, to support people's quote unquote self-actualization. So I was like, okay, if we're at this place where I feel like we really need kind of a collective transformation, then how can we incorporate these visualization and imagination practices that aren't focused on just the individual, but are about more radical visions of what could be at a more collective and systemic level. So that's kind of like the seeds of the inspiration, and it had been on the back of my mind for a couple years. And unfortunately or fortunately at this stage, it was kind of our financial pressures of like, how do we continue to fund Green Dreamer? Because we had received a grant that supported us from 2022 to 2023. So towards the end of last year, the latter half of last year, I was like, we don't have anything that is as significant as this grant that we received. So we kind of have to become our own funder if we want to continue to not have to take on corporate sponsors. So yeah, I was like, okay, this has been in the back of my mind. Now we just have to, pull it together and curate and bring people together and make this happen. So luckily we did. Anissa is my other team member that also, did a lot to make this happen. And our program advisor, Gabe Torres, and all of our contributors have been so amazing to work with. So I'm just really grateful that it wasn't the most ideal of circumstances that kind of like pushed us to do this, but like I'm so grateful that it led us here and we got to share this with the world, and so grateful for you guys and everyone who, trusted in us and took a leap of faith to experiment and play. So yeah, just really grateful for everything and how things played out.
Well, it does cost money, but I see it as a way to support Green Dreamers' good work, and it certainly we got a lot of value from the 40 exercises, and personally, I'm going to do them all again because the first time, you kind of just get into it. But yeah, I'm wondering how many. I know we're having a session on Saturday with the larger group. How many people actually took the course in parallel?
This session we had like 180 people move through it together, so it was way freaking beyond my expectations. I was like, if we reach like 50 people, it will be like dream come true, and it just kept going. So, about 10 of those are our actual contributors because we just invited them to be able to join if they wanted to. So, I would say maybe like 165-ish people who enrolled who weren't a part of our contributors team. But yeah, that's still like very wild to me that people from all over the globe were, moving through this container of the program together. And we're excited to welcome everyone to map themselves onto this directory that we're creating so people can kind of visualize where people were all over. And as we host new cohorts, like we're excited to bring those people in and welcome people to map themselves as well. So hopefully we'll just see this map of increasing dots all over the globe, and it would be awesome if people in locations where they can host in-person meetups to be able to do so one day, because there were definitely several locations that had a more concentrated amount of people there. So that would be awesome if people are able to meet up in person and kind of start here but create their own things riffing off of the program. And yeah, I think that's one of our goals, is to support people to connect with each other, and not have to like be here in a centralized location, but like sort of build decentralized things wherever they are.
Well, I certainly admire the hard work you put into it, because doing something of that scale for the first time, I think it's a very successful course. And I'll invite my colleagues around our circle. And for listeners, the circle, and in fact, that's a question for you, Kamea. What was the hope of the circles? Because they worked well for us as a not just networking, but support group and learning from each other. Was that your hope, that people would then sort of pull it together in a verbal way?
Yeah, so with the circles, I think it was our first time running this program to start, so we learned a lot doing it. The circles was really hit and miss because for the groups that were really actively engaged, like you guys, I presume it's been a valuable experience, invaluable experience, and that's the feedback we gained from other people who also shared that they had tight knit groups that were really engaged. And there were some people that asked to be replaced into different groups because they wanted to be super engaged, but their team members didn't have the capacity to meet as often as they would like, or weren't really as responsive as they hoped. So it was really a mixed bag. And we were able to reintroduce people who were, looking for more engagement with each other, and hopefully that worked out better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like for a program like this, it would be really nice to have people to go through it with. And yeah, also just to like share space and share what you're experiencing with people who are going through a similar experience as you. So I feel like it might have been different if we were to host something ourselves, because the lens through which we're hosting it would be different than you guys, like, at the same phase in this trajectory. So hopefully it's been valuable for people who have been able to be engaged in their circles.
So why don't we just do a little, 2, 3 minutes each, and why don't we start with Anais like we did last time? We'll do that same circle.
Sure, great, thank you. And I'm guessing this is kind of those questions that you shared with us, Claude,
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So, yeah, I have been listening to Green Dreamer for a few years now, and I really appreciate all of the work that you put into that. It's so incredible to hear these kinds of conversations. Yeah, I know, round of applause. It's amazing, amazing work. So it's just very resonant. And as soon as I heard about alchemize, it was like, oh, like this is so exciting. Um, Particularly, again, as I mentioned, I'm a student right now, and I've been looking for the kinds of practices that were shared through alchemize, particularly because I don't necessarily feel like I come from a deep, this is a generalization, but kind of a deep kin making tradition. And I feel like a lot of these practices are really centered around kin um, and sort of groundedness. And I really love the sort of anywhere you are, you can be with these practices. It doesn't really map onto any particular location. It really invites us to consider new ways of approaching the spaces that we're already in. So I knew going into it that it would be very transformative based on the conversations that I've heard on Green Dreamer. And it really was a success, I think, for me in particular. There were so many in particular. I really liked the kin sorry, I am bringing in kin, but Gavin Van Horn, he spoke to the sort of we breathing, and that was such a beautiful moment because I've been looking for a way to really ground in a sort of reciprocity with the plant beings around me, and being able to engage in such an immediate way, right? Of breathe in you, breathe out me, breathe in we. Like that was so moving to me, and I've really engaged with it multiple times since. And then also the ones that invited us into new worlds. It's such a difficult thing to do, I think, without necessarily knowing who's behind the voice, typically. But in these, I felt so welcomed, and I felt like I could be there with the voices. I really appreciated the audio format because I forgot to mention I'm also a vocalist and a musician, and so connecting through voice is a really beautiful way for me to feel resonant in the world. And anyway, I don't want to take too much time, but those were some of the highlights for me, is the imagined spaces that we could go to together, and then with the circle really dig into. So thank you.
Ben, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe I'll just share some of my experiences of the program. And yeah, thank you so much for assembling all this and all the curation and the whole team. And it was such a beautiful experience. And I know I feel like it's not an easy thing too. I was really curious to see how it all unrolled, because doing this in a digital and, geographically distributed way comes with a lot of challenges. And I think the everything from like the art work to the presentation of the themes to the curation of like giving space for digestion and alchemizing, all the ways of making that happen through the digital ways, through an email inbox, was like really incredible, I think. And then it was really helpful to have this circle as a motivating place to kind of ground those and make them more, just bring them into the flesh in a different way, and to hear how things resonated with other people and stuff. So overall, that was just a really amazing thing. And I think if one of the questions we were asking here is kind of like what drew us to the program. And I think for me, yeah, too, just being a fan of Green Dreamer for a while, and then seeing this happen. And I haven't had the best relationship with school institutions and other forms of educational formats. So like anytime there's like a proposal like this for an alternative pedagogical experience that's like rooted not in marks or evaluation or, pressure to go in a certain direction or to like, I don't know, this just, all the diverse kind of perspectives and people, and then the emphasis on taking things at your own pace and having different sensorial ways of getting into it too, through the listening or like having the transcripts or the journaling prompts. And I still feel like, yeah, I just work through the tip of the iceberg on it. Like there's so much more to revisit and go back to. And I really love that there wasn't the pressure to like get it all at once. And then, yeah, I guess just there were a lot of standout ones. I don't know, it's hard to choose. The longer ancestral body, thinking through that was really interesting. The moving beyond colonial borders, the stars, Sean Sherman, and I don't know, too many highlights maybe to mention, but yeah, just lots still more to do, which I feel really excited about. And I also just maybe in the question period have a lot of questions about how you see this. Like you talked about the collectivization and the wider dream of that, and how you see this happening, having now that it's wrapping up this first iteration, and kind of the plans forward beyond that too. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll keep that question in mind. We'll get to that
Sure.
in a few minutes. Barbara, why don't you go next?
Okay, well, I want to echo Ben's and Anis's thank you, like huge thanks for Green Dreamer overall and this program in particular. The reason why I took it was I saw it advertised and I thought, oh, it sounds perfect. But I also had a pretty heavy sort of administrative teaching load this semester, and I thought, I can't do it. But then I read it again. It still sounded so perfect. And I'm the person, I mean, maybe there were hundreds of us who at the very last minute said, oh, can I please get in? And I'm so happy I did. As I'm right now writing a book that's like trying to think about collective agency and to move away from the idea of the individual. So when you were describing like I'd like sort of what generated the project for you, I probably saw that in the description, but it just felt so exactly on. And then the other thing is I use writing prompts in my teaching, and it described prompts. I thought, oh gosh, I want to see how that works in this too. Obviously, it's so perfect for me. And in terms of stuff I liked, everything that I mentioned there, I felt was really realized in the programming beautifully. But I was surprised by the many of the audio pieces engage with temporality and sort of multi-layer time. And I love that. I hadn't really known that would be there, and I appreciated it. I really loved the variety, and I loved the focus that you actually mentioned on meditation or grounding our thinking in our bodies. But our bodies, the last piece like has really been like kind of resonating for me, which is you are bounded and you are boundless. I feel like that's a really hard thing to hold. And I sort of went through the whole series, but it's so important to try to understand or feel that, not even understand it, but feel it. And I appreciated that. And then I guess I'll just say quickly, the circle was like amazing. I would, if anyone was doing it, I'd say, oh yeah, you need a circle both for keeping the pacing, but also for like exchanging ideas and talking to like-minded people. And I got a lot out of it. So really grateful to all of you guys too for like for us all being together through this. So thank you.
Well, we had a lot of fun. Michelle.
Okay. Well, I first heard about Green Dreamer actually through Claude and his podcasts and some of the work that he was doing. So I was introduced to it through that. And back in the beginning of the year, sometimes I choose a word to bring me into a year. And this year I chose the word imagination. And I don't know, I hadn't given a lot of thought about, I mean, what I was trying to unlock was, creating more spaciousness for creativity, play, and imagination as a way to, in the work that I've been doing, if we're trying to shift mindsets, how where's my own place of creating that spaciousness, and was finding that I was like very task oriented. in what I was doing. So one of the programs we have is a transformation storytelling fellowship program, which is an intergenerational program. And one of our new fellows said, "Oh, I signed up for this alchemize program," and put it in the chat. And it was just right at the beginning of January, had chosen the word imagination. I was like, I signed up within 30 minutes, not really knowing, to be honest, what I signed up for, besides just the quick description, and have found, yeah, this group knows that like I've been on a bit of a journey. I was in and out of the circle, and to just find the spaciousness to be okay with that was, yeah, a really interesting moment, because I tend to be somebody who, yeah, just is a little, you sign up for something, you show up to everything. So for the pieces that I was able to interact with and the pieces I know to come, I would say that most definitely the notions of collective care, and even the way this group held that weaving of how people came in and out, I think was really interesting. And then when I was listening to ones where I felt really a sense of discomfort, which, to be honest, tended to be like where it really got into a place of what would I say? Places I haven't been before, to try to ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And to just have a bit of limitlessness with that moment, as opposed to just kind of stopping up against it. And so I guess I did a lot of questioning of myself around what I was sensing into, instead of, yeah, just kind of being there. So the one I know I shared with this group that stood out to me, and I've already mentioned, I love nature. So all the ones that had the stars, the nature, was the pollinating bees one. And I think because when I first met Claude and some of the soundscape work, that I realized that as an art form, that's something that really speaks to me. And so the sound pieces within this series were pieces that I got quite excited about. But I had this unlock recently where I was telling somebody about this podcast series, and I'm like, I thought I was, talking through the imagination play. And by the time we were done chatting through it, I realized what I was really seeking out was solitude and quiet time, and time to just be and not do. And so this, yeah, created some of that. And then I think it's an invitation to me to figure out how else to build that in. And so I've been talking this up to all sorts of people. And like, I guess the cool connections that come from this are the storytelling fellow telling me about this, but then some of what I've learned from all of these folks has like had me on little rabbit holes into different places. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for the connectivity and what else might come from this.
I'll go as well, but I'll be brief because I won't want to hear from Kamea as well. I had applied for another course that I wasn't accepted in because these things happen. And then I was thinking, oh, what's next? What am I going to do? And then this course came along that was so perfectly suited to where I was and what I needed. I felt that in reading it. And so, I registered and all that. And, you had me from the very first one, when we say, I am here, I am listening. That's what I'm trying to do. I think that's what we all try to do, but it was so beautiful to start with that because it still stays with me. I'm here, I'm listening. You could stop right there and you'd have a lot, And then there's 39 more. And I won't go through them all, but Kamea, I want you to know that the number 23, the You Are Water, the one that you, I think, wrote and recited, transformative. You just see yourself, feel yourself being a drop of water, and transforming is the right word, alchemize, I guess. But so beautifully done and such a nice story, right? And so there's those that were stories intrigued me, and the ones that were more artistic, they're all artistic, but some of them were a bit more didactic. And so the feelings and emotions, and in particular, there was one around what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you. And I just had so much trouble accepting that there are things that don't resonate with me because I wanted to be perfect. I want them all to resonate. Didn't. My activism is in service of my evolution. I'm still working through that one, right? But it's so interesting to confront your, assumptions and your biases and all that through a gentle process of invitation. I think that's the thing, is that you're always invited, never forced to go somewhere, and you always do that introduction if you're, if you're not ready, if you're not feeling right, So there's that sense of safety comfort, but also challenging. It gets challenging. It's not easy because if you do it right, you will be challenged. You need to be challenged. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the course. We've all spoken now, so Kamea, what are some of your reactions or thoughts on what we've said?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Just very honored and humbled to be able to share this conversation with everyone and get to hear what it was like for you guys moving through it for the first time. Because, after we've worked on it for such a long time, we just have no idea what it's like to have a fresh mind going through it and to be co-editing and conceptualizing these practices. It's different, for us than it is for somebody who's like actually entering as a participant, listening to it for the first time, not really knowing where these practices are going to go. So this was, I appreciate everyone sharing what you shared. I took down some notes as you guys were speaking, so I wanted to touch on a few things. I think one of the most interesting things was across the feedback that we got. Some people thought the program was overall very affirming in their experiences. And there were others that were like, I felt like discomforted or, disturbed or disrupted. And there were some people that were like, I wanted it to be affirming and it was affirming. Or some people were like, I wanted it to be more like discomforting or disruptive. Or some people were like, I wanted it to be more affirming and I felt some discomfort. So I think just for us to be able to see that big picture just reaffirms, yes, we all have uniquely storied bodies. So given these exact same repertoire of practices, everyone's going to engage with them differently. And not just everyone, but like the same person across a different setting, across a different time. So it's amazing to hear that you've found it valuable to revisit certain practices. And I hope that everyone downloads the file, keepsakes it forever, and revisits a lot of these practices over time, because it's kind of like sacred plant medicine in a way, where it meets you where you are based on your intentions, based on your setting, based on, your relationships and everything, where that space in between, I think, is the most powerful piece, is us holding the container and, guiding people in certain directions, but then like, here's the silence, go run with it and see, what comes up for you. So yeah, that has been really powerful to think about how it's just how dynamic like all of our bodies are and how different all of our bodies are. And then also one of the things that we intentionally did in creating the program was we didn't want it to be heavily centered on people who are considered traditional guides, like whether they're like meditation guides or embodiment guides. And we had a handful of people who already do a lot of this type of guiding in their own work. But we had like academics involved, we had activists involved, we had chefs involved. And so when we collaborated with, for example, some of the more academia focused people, like the teachers or professors, we got one feedback from one of them saying like, oh, it's actually like very fun and like interesting for me to be thinking in this way, because I never write this way in my academic work. Like I'm always like writing, very scholarly and etc. So to be able to create a practice off of the intellectual concepts that I've been sitting with, like that was fun for them to kind of switch gears in terms of the how of delivering the same material just in a different way. So that was definitely something we did intentionally, was like, we don't want people to be like, the whole point is to have diverse ways of presenting this information, because everyone's going to register this in different ways. So some of the practices ended up feeling more intellectual, some of them were more practiced, some of them were more sensorial, some of them, activated different parts of people. And to an extent, we were like, oh, should we make this more like this? But then we're like, no, some people might actually, resonate more with something that we might not resonate with as the host, but it's going to hit deeper for some other people. So across the feedback too, like people saying this one resonated most with me, that was also super diverse in people's responses. Some things that I personally had a harder time connecting to, like people thought were their favorites. So that's also, again, reaffirming how diverse everybody is. Um, and then, yeah, I would just say like another intention of the program was just this knowing that sometimes you can't be told something, you have to feel it in a different way.
Mm.
So sometimes, I don't know, my mom might tell me the same thing over and over and over again, and I don't listen, but then something happens to me where I just like feel it or experience something differently. And I'm like, I see it now. So that was part of the curiosities, at least as well for us, was on the podcast we're like talking about these subjects, but what would it be like to put people in these spaces so that it's more interactive in a sense, so that people are kind of co-leading the creation of feelings and knowledge and sensations rather than simply like sitting passively and being told something. So that was another intention. And then what else did I have? Um, oh yeah, in terms of like the simple experience of, everything being delivered via email, we thought about this too because we explored like, oh, there's this course platform we can use and etc. And a lot of them are really wonderful, but we were like, how do we keep this as simple for people as possible? Like, I don't want for people to have to log in or like have to have the internet when they want to go through it. And so, yeah, what we landed on was sending the files directly to people so everyone can download it. It lives on your own screens or your own digital spaces. So even if people don't have internet or are going off grid for like 2 weeks and want to revisit something, hopefully they can still have access to that. So yeah, I forgot if Ben had another question.
Yeah, Ben, why don't you re-articulate your question there and we can get
Oh
to it.
yeah, sure. I don't remember it exactly, but I was just interested in kind of picking up, Kamea, what you were talking about of the intention to collectivize this work a little more on like a systemic level. And just now having gone through it now, like, do you feel like you have a sense of that, or like, has that opened up different ways of thinking through that for you? Or yeah, just kind of curious around that.
So we had been asked before if we were going to create like a centralized sort of community space. And for Green Dreamer, I had tried that before, but it was actually like it always ended up being the same few people who were very actively engaged. And I personally feel more drawn to supporting people to build more place based relationships because there's more of a shared context to, connect on. So that's how we landed on creating this directory, this map based directory to help people support people to visualize where people are located geographically. And people can also write a bio so people can share their interests and people can also connect based on interests, even if someone's across the globe. But yeah, I really love this idea of undercurrents and what we're hosting on Saturday, which I hope most of you or all of you might be there. It should be a fun, fun experience. But yeah, I like this visual and this idea of the undercurrent. So not really holding something that is like a centralized space based on alchemize, but we were in this container together. Now we're all gonna spill back over to wherever we are, and I really invite and welcome and encourage everybody to like kind of take whatever they got out of alchemize to grow and strengthen the undercurrents and take that with them. So I don't know what that will look like, and that's the beauty of it because it's supposed to look different everywhere. So no cookie cutter thing, no one size fits all, no formula for like, okay, you should do this, and this after because yeah, everyone has their own uniquely powerful ways of carrying all of these offerings forward.
Yeah, I really appreciate that approach. It's just like the creativity that comes with that and like the sense of just yeah, I mean, I feel like we felt that in our circle in a way too. Like I even though we aren't in the same city, all of us in the circle, like knowing that we are a drive apart is really comforting in a way, like homey. Like I look forward to seeing you all at some time, which I'm sure we'll run into each other. But so those like little that regional connection, I feel like really helps or helped me ground in this stuff too, because it'd be really great to meet with people all over the world too. And I feel like a lot of things happened like that in the pandemic too, but I do really appreciate the regional connection as well. So yeah.
Are you thinking of like doing another iteration of it? And if so, are you thinking of having the same pacing or changing it? Or or it's probably early days to ask that question, but I was curious.
Yeah, we've explored a lot of our different possibilities, and it'll always be in the works, like, oh, what could be next? I know a lot of people also loved the otherness practices. And I was like, I feel like we can create a whole program just on otherness, like have someone come talk about fish and have a practice on fish, have someone talk about soil and like a practice on soil. So there's just so many. I mean, all of the themes could be entire programs on their own, obviously, but yeah, I think we would definitely entertain building upon the program, and which is why I'm also very curious to hear from everyone, like, what would you be curious to see more of? Because that we definitely want to take that into account as well. Like, what is your heart's yearning for, and what do you feel like would be most supportive of you and your personal journeys where you are? Um, yeah. And one thing that we are going to start doing is for our Patreon community, we're going to start sending like one practice every month. But these practices will more so be just like breathing, slowing down. They'll more so be like the porousness practices that don't really require a lot of preparation work per se, because I feel like some of the practices like the intergenerational responsibility one, like I don't feel like we can just toss that at somebody without any background preparation of like, okay, remember to listen to your body, remember to like disengage if you need to, because some of them are, like might take you places that are discomforting for people. So I don't feel like it would be responsible of us to like just share those practices outside of a container like this. But for Patreon, we intend to publish monthly guided practices that are more so like the we breathing or like just slowing down and etc. Just to remind people in a lot of these spaces to do so. And that is also part of our work to build our Patreon community, because we also know we have to keep doing that for that to be able to fully support our work. But yeah, I would be curious to hear what everyone would be interested in seeing more of.
Well, I'll tell you in 6 months or a year, once it's sort of digested, and because I think the initial responses and reactions are genuine, but with time, as we literally practice some of the things that we've learned or unlearned, I think it will unfold, so that hopefully it'll be an ongoing dialogue about this experience. And I think we're very privileged to be the first ones, right? Because now we're talking about it and other people might do it, but it's so interesting to have the journey. I was so excited when the email came in, because I knew you guys worked really hard on them. And then, I've produced stuff like that. And it's just, you send it out and then you don't know how it'll go, because it's all about all the first time. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking to put it out for the first time, and every week we're still editing like stuff to be published the next week. So we were still and we are still actively working on closing off this iteration, because now we're working on what we're doing on Saturday, and then after Saturday we're putting together the directory and the post-program survey and the alumni newsletter that we want to start running. And that's also how we hope to support people to continue weaving their connections, is through this newsletter. So we're going to invite people to submit, updates wherever they are. If they have projects inspired by alchemize or related to alchemize that they want to share about, you're welcome to do that. If people are hosting local meetups, let us know too. And so we'll be sending out probably seasonal to monthly alumni newsletters, so that, yeah, even if people aren't close to the location of where somebody is doing a project, hopefully that can still be a sort of inspiration. Like, oh, this person's doing this based on this experience, and I had this idea. Maybe I can also do something about that. So yeah, just to, keep something going.
Well, I don't have a question, but I love like just how you've been thinking about how networks are connected, and I think just, yeah, there's lots of elements that have been touched on about why that's good. But just to share with you in terms of like mapping out connections, there was a session recently with a transition innovation group that Claude and I are part of, that he was kind of hosting a peer session around how can art help defeat defeatism? And so Barb came and joined us for that, which was really cool to have that. And then I learned about this most amazing music festival, which is right near where my sister kind of has a cottage that she connected into through some family. And so I've sent it to her. And they're excited to join something this summer. And then my last one would be the Transformation Storytelling Fellow is going to be sharing a story about their circle in a written format coming up. And so I'm excited to see, how that connects to our journey. So just there's so many ways I'm sure this is going to, carry through, but really, yeah, tons of gratitude for what you created and what's yet to come.
In that same example I talked about in the water one, there was a sound of a pipe. And I am a soundscape composer, and I just really appreciated just having that delicate sound enter into the space, and you didn't do it too much, it was just illustrative and made a point, and probably helped me in my pipe journey, going through that. But that's a very nice artistic touch. And I think Azul, Carolina Duque, who did some of the guitar work, who I know, and it's so beautiful to hear her play. So to integrate art into it, but the whole thing is art. Right?
Yeah. I really loved playing with we collaborated with Art Twink, the artist, on our program thematic artwork. And the overall thing is just this giant bundle. Because I was like, should we create like 5 different artworks for the 5 themes? And I was like, no, let's create like one giant thing with all the elements, because that's also the medium as the message. Like everything's, entangled and spilling over to each other. So yeah, for me to be able to play with every email everyone received and like, okay, which area do I want to like focus on? Like, do we want it scaled back or like scaled in? And across all the PDFs too, like, some that are in water, like, okay, we'll go to the water portion. And then I think there was one on gravity where I intentionally just flipped it upside down just because. So I flipped the artwork upside down. So just a little playful touch of disorientation. But yeah, it was very fun for us to be able to think artistically about all of these different aspects too. And the sound effects, the music portion, the art, supporting people to create art. And we're super excited to see what everyone will be bringing on Saturday as well in terms of your creations.
Yeah, I have kind of 2 questions that have come up for me. One is sort of speaking to the collaborators, all the different folks who were involved with this. I'm curious about what the prompt was. How did you ask folks to participate in this in the ways that they did? Because it, like you said, it's so diverse and it's such a plurality of stories and intentions. And I know you have the themes. So that's my first question. And then kind of a follow-up question to that is related to how actually, I'll pause there. I'll ask that question first. I think that's
Okay.
better.
Yeah, this was really interesting because I feel like there were some people who we invited to be a part of the program who like aren't traditional meditation guides. They're in the academia space. We're like, no, I don't think this is a good fit for me. And we realized, okay, we probably have to like word this differently so that they understand that that's the whole point is we don't want people who are like traditional mindfulness guides and things like that. Like we want you for your specific interest and focus. But yeah, I think we definitely had verbiage of like, we know this might be an unconventional invitation to be thinking this way, but we will support you through the editing process. If you have any questions, like we're here to support with like rounds of editing and etc. So yeah, there were a couple contributors who contributed their piece and were like, okay, it sounds kind of overly like a script per se, like not really like a engaged practice. So we had to work our magic into it to kind of translate what people want to get across into more of an interactive practice. And then there are other people where they submitted it and we're like, this is perfect as is. So there really was a variety because, you know, people have different experiences in terms of creating practices like the ones that we shared. So yeah, I think, and then obviously knowing each of our guest contributors, we kind of gave them suggested themes or directions to go on, but we're like, we welcome you to like, you know, explore alternatives if you want to. But yeah, we wanted to overall curate like a very diverse program, like some at the macro level, some at the micro level, some that are embodied, some that are more mind focused, just all over the place. So just a giant, messy, entangled chaos.
Alchemized.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense that you must have received all kinds of different perspectives and different ways of recording even. So to have such a cohesive but also diverse set of practices is amazing. And then my second question was also about like guidance, how I know you curated it with your team, and I'm just kind of curious. You spoke a little bit about your methodology earlier of how you entered into all of this, but yeah, just kind of what really was guiding you through this whole process, I guess.
Hmm. I feel like that's a difficult question for me to answer because I haven't even really overly intellectualized it because I feel like a lot of it was just like an intuition, like a sense that I can't
Mm.
necessarily explain. I don't even really remember now like how the five themes came together. But I think just kind of having the sense that okay, if we're gonna take people in like strange places later on in the program, we should start by rooting people where they are and like affirming the self before we kind of expand that because yeah, make sure people feel affirmed and safe and feel rooted before we open into porosity where we're kind of opening up and expanding our bounds before we go in and doing that before we like shapeshift perspectives and then move on to the bigger picture of belonging and then beyond belonging to what could be. So um, I think just kind of thinking through the flow of what means and what should come before another one in terms of the chronology of things. Like we want to support people to feel this way before they do this and etc. That said, we know everything that has been our intentions are like kind of our starting place because everyone runs, you know, in different directions with it. So it's kind of what guided us, but it's supposed to be experimental and all over the place. And
Well, we'll wrap up in a few minutes. I wanted to say something I said in one of the circles that's a bit delicate, but it's, I think, an example of how deep this can go. I felt at one point that I was more comfortable with my eventual death through doing these exercises. Communicating with the more than human beings, being part of the cosmos, talking to the ancestors, all that. And I don't mean that in a glib way. I think it's just something I felt. Um, and so it's really interesting to have those experiences, maybe that have always been there, right? But maybe we always were ready to alchemize and we just never did it or didn't have the guidance. But so many things came through that I was on the verge of coming, and then it just got triggered. It got helped. It got nurtured a bit, and I think I'm hoping that it will continue to be nurtured. So that's a real gift, I think, for us all to have that guidance from all these people, and do thank them for on our behalf, all the collaborators, because it's received as a gift for me anyway, and so there's a lot of gratitude there. Why don't we end the way we've ended every circle? This idea of ending with a moment of joy or a moment of, something that we're grateful for.
I think my biggest gratitude now is for everyone who trusted us and took this leap of faith to experiment and play with us because yeah, it has been a work of love and labor. And we celebrated this week from having sent out Practice 40 last week, and we're very excited about our celebratory gathering on Saturday. So yeah, I'm just personally grateful for everyone who joined us, all the contributors, everyone who helped make this possible. Um, and yeah, that's still where I am.
Yeah, wow. This time has been really incredible to spend with you. Thank you, Kamea, and thank you all for your participation, not just in this moment, but across the whole the whole Alchemize program. It's been really wonderful to get to know all of you. I think my joy right now is actually hearing how many folks participated in this overall. I'm really excited to see them this Saturday. I think that it's such a particular moment in time that really requires a lot of diverse voices and diverse practices and ways of connecting to each other's ways of knowing and ways of seeing and being and hearing. So I'm just very appreciative that that's really happening and that I am excited to see the ways in which it keeps flowing from this program. So thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yeah, that you picked up on something I was just gonna say too, I think is the flow. Like I'm sad in a way right now that we're closing this portion of the circle, but also very excited and have a lot of joy for thinking how these things will continue because I feel like the circle has been about that sort of from the beginning, is this feeling of continuance. And and I also just really appreciate, I mean, I'm gratitude for a lot of things in this process, but I think the play between re sensitizing to the world and also having the freedom to dissociate in a playful manner or like unplug from the the other not so nice things, and to be in playfulness of that, and to for that practice to be have the variety of energy it needs and whenever it needs it. So I'm excited to keep exploring that. I feel like there's lots still to explore that, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful for this program and for all of you. I'll go to we used to end with just giving joy, and it could sometimes be profound and wide ranging, like all of yours. But sometimes it was daily and kind of mundane. And mine, and like drinking tea or what have you. And mine this week is that. I had a really, really busy week. And I'm just so grateful to have this weekend where I don't have a lot of things booked, and the things that are booked, like your like wrapping up um, uh, event, are all good. So I'm grateful for unstructured time.
Uh, for me, I think what's coming up as I was hearing everybody is just being in this collective care moment, but not connected to my work was a real gift. And so I guess, yeah, for joy, I would say it is, yeah, finding the spaciousness to explore things that are more at an individual level, but still connected to the collective. And my question that I'm not going to get to ask you, but just what can we hold for you? Because you have given everybody so much. And so I know that that is a big gift that you give to people, and always curious about how people, yeah, navigate that for themselves. So thank you for everything, and to Claude for bringing us together in this way with this brilliant almost ending.
Well, I have a couple of ones. One is I'm grateful that we'll share this recording with, the audience and people who are interested either in the course or just in following the art and ecological crisis discussions. And we didn't use those words, right? I mean, ecological crisis and climate change, and yet that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the root causes of our malaise. And so that's really and I wanted to say also that I have a deeper sense of calm, Kamea, from this experience. And I'm writing a newsletter now called A Calm Presence. And it's hard to do. It's easy to say, but to actually be calm and with all of the anxiety and the stress around us, the exercises were where they were able to reduce the level of stress and strain, even though sometimes it was difficult, and bring us in every day into a creative space. And so that just brings energy into the challenges of our day. So that's my moment of joy. I think that's it.
Thank you.